This isn't just like we're just slinging drugs. I always say the nitty gritty. I don't like that phrase, the nitty gritty. Antipsychotics are expensive as fuck. We are back in the closet. Today, I have even taken down the clothes in the background because I care so much about what we are going to be discussing. I might run through it rather quickly though, because I was hoping to get this video out today, but seeing as how it's already 8 o'clock, probably not gonna happen, but maybe. And yeah, it's a little darker in here than usual. I don't know how, because it's the same old closet I'm usually in. But hey, I'm not gonna show you my horrible handwriting actually, although you might have just saw it. But I did take notes today. That is something I never do, but I wanted to just make sure I am as clear as possible on this, because this is sort of my, like, I don't want to call it a pet project. That sounds weird. That just is a weird phrase to me. I don't like that phrase, but it's something I care a lot about, and I have put a lot of thought into. Apologies again, I'm not looking at the camera. I can't look and talk at the same time. Anyway, so the subject, now with all that preamble out of the way, is open source antipsychotics. And this idea I have is modeled after the Open Insulin Project, or Open Insulin Foundation, I think is the actual, like, formal name. You may have seen my other videos in which I've mentioned that, or you may just already be familiar with them. Now, let's just start at the beginning, the premise of why we're doing this thing before I explain fully what it is that antipsychotics, and this is coming from somebody who has been on several different ones of various dosages and has schizophrenia. Antipsychotics are expensive as fuck. Now, if you go on Google, the Google AI, well, for one, you really should not read that. It tends to be just wrong or misleading. But in this instance, you might see where, like, one antipsychotic is listed as like $12. I think I remember that. But, and you may think to yourself, oh, well, that actually sounds pretty cheap. What do you mean they're expensive? But you have to realize that in most cases, you're not actually going to end up paying $12. And that particular one, I'm blanking on the name, but I read about it. Like many of the other cheaper ones, is just, it fucking sucks, to be honest with you. The side effect burden is very heavy, and that tends to be the case with a lot of antipsychotics. And the better ones, or the ones that either work more effectively or have less side effects, or both, tend to be the more expensive ones. And I do remember one of the ones I was on is the first one I was on, actually. I don't know that I should say. Oh well, I was pretty sure aripiprazole was the first one I was on. Unless I'm misremembering. And that ran me about $50 a month, and I had private insurance. It was $50 a month, so that would be about $600 a year. Or in my lifetime, if I were to live like an average lifespan, if we were just taking it, not even when I first started, but if we were just going off right now, that'd be like $30,000 spent on the medication alone. And I think it's important to consider as well, sorry, I'm going to be looking down at my notes. I think it's important to consider as well that people with schizophrenia tend to not be able to work, or we can only do part-time jobs, and we tend to be stuck in lower paying work, or even if we have a decently paying job, advancement can be very difficult for us for obvious reasons. And so we tend to find ourselves in lower income brackets, and you have to couple all that with the fact that, like, okay, we're paying for antipsychotics, which I just outlined, and mind you, I said $50 a month. For other people with different insurances or on different medications, that could be a lot higher. So paying for the antipsychotic medications, and there's also things like psychiatry appointments. You might have to get psychotherapy, as I have. Good chance you'll end up hospitalized, which that is ridiculously expensive, usually, in pretty much all cases, actually. And you may undergo, while it's not the usual procedure for schizophrenia, you can also end up receiving ECT, which that is like, what does that usually run people? Oh, I think like well, I guess it varies, but I think it's like 25,000. It depends on exactly how many rounds and how long you're doing it. There's different factors, but yeah, either way, ridiculously expensive, and often you're not just doing one of those things, right? Like typically you have to, if you're on antipsychotics, you still have to have like psychiatry appointments, even if they're not like every month. You still, need to have some, or you may still have therapy and stuff. And therapy can be expensive as all hell. I mean, when I haven't met my like deductible on like the private insurance, what were sessions? I think it was like 200. Yeah, if I haven't met the deductible. So if you're doing that like weekly or every other week, that's quite a lot. Now even with the deductible, I think it's like 50 is what I paid out of pocket per session. So that would run me, let's go with that. That's like 200 a month. Plus you got to think the 50 a month for the medication. And then psychiatry appointments without the deductible, I think was like, ooh, I can't remember. The time what I was billed varied. I remember at times being billed 400. So I guess, I don't know. I can't say 100% on that, but still, the fact that there were times when I would pay like 400 per session, and sometimes it wouldn't necessarily be like every single month, but it might be like every like 45 days or something. It adds up. It adds up a lot. So with this idea I have of open source antipsychotics, and what I'm calling colloquially right now the free Sanity project, would be, I guess the goal would be to reduce it to, I think we could go $10 a month, and that's not just like a random thing I'm throwing out there. I have spent some time on this, and even the aforementioned Open Insulin project, their target is like $7 a month, which actually is feasible, and as in like $7, like, or no, it's $7 a vial for them. But I think a 30-day supply for antipsychotics, I think we could do at least $10. Sorry, this part I didn't actually write notes for, so it might sound like kind of like rambly. The point is, like, I'm not just making, it's not just a random number I've farted out, okay? But now obviously with like inflation and like these things would be happening in the future, I can't see the future. It may not work out that way, but I actually think that is an achievable goal. In an ideal world, it would be free, and that's kind of the grand dream of the project, hence the name. But obviously, under the current system, I'm thinking it would have to be like, yeah, probably $10 per like a 30-day supply. Maybe you could get like for a 3-month supply, it would be a reduced rate. Like it wouldn't be like $30 for a 3-month supply. And I guess I should explain more of like what I mean by like the open source aspect of it. So this wouldn't involve any sort of patents or licensing that you would usually require in order to replicate the formula for the medication, or to use like the same process, or to sell the prescription. In other words, anyone would be able to do it, and it would essentially just like be in the hands of the public. Think of like public domain media. And this would obviously, we're still following like federal regulations here, like being in compliance. This isn't just like we're just slinging drugs. But shit, I think, yeah, we could get it down to the $10 a month, and that would make a huge difference. Like in the example that I gave, that would reduce it from what for me would have been $30,000 in my lifetime to just $6,000, which now that still obviously is $6,000 that has gone over my lifespan if I were to live like an average life, from the point that I started at, but with my illness. But I think too, not only is it achievable, but we could make ones that don't suck shit, because frankly I hate the model of, well, this isn't always one for one. Like I said, there's a lot of factors that go into this. Usually the better ones that have less of a side effect burden are the more expensive ones. Well, I want something that is affordable and also does not just suck complete ass. And I think that this would be, it'd have to be a non-profit, I think. I don't think there'd be any real way around that. I don't know, with certainty, I guess. But I want it to be run by people with schizophrenia. And I think too, I think this open source model would actually be greatly beneficial in that it would allow for like the free exchange of information and more easier collaboration that you wouldn't get under normal circumstances. And I think as the project would grow, or whether that's like the direct organization or just other people who like are also developing the same medications, it would allow for a much more decentralized production and distribution in that. So like say for example, there's some hiccup or like problem in the supply chain, then that would be less likely to affect a large number of people, right? Because it's coming from different sources. The chain is more, what am I thinking, like dispersed, spread out, not all compacted. Okay, you know what? I think you get the idea. I'm not going to ramble too much. I think too that it would also allow for greater transparency, which I mean I intend to be, if we're talking hypothetical, but if this were to become a thing, I would want it to be fully transparent on like how money is being spent, transparent, you know, obviously about the goals and stuff as well, and I think transparent about, you know, what exactly, all of like the data and stuff, and so I think that would just lead to greater collaboration and would actually help with getting the funding, because the funding will be absolutely like insane for this. I can say that I have schizophrenia. Oh yeah, and I think that decentralized production model will actually be more beneficial towards meeting the specific needs of local communities, or at least needs at the like state level. Now, I mean, before you say anything, you may already be saying things, you little rascal. I realize this would be like a grand undertaking, and I will get into that in a minute, and that this is not just a simply done thing. When I say I've thought about this, I have actually thought about it. I know some people just throw that out there, but I do mean it. I am a pretty logistically minded individual, and before I get into all the like more logistical and like things that will demonstrate just how much like time and money would have to go into this, I want to let's glance over the notes real quick, see if there's anything I missed. I might just cut this part out. Let's get into the, let's say, challenges of this. We are talking like years, because you have to think of how long it would take to actually develop it and then go through the clinical trials. And on the more monetary side, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, absolute minimum, probably in the millions, and that's over the lifetime of the project. Not to say that we need like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars like at the start. We can start it for much less than that. And this is I should have said this in the beginning, this is a more conceptual video. I think I'll do a separate one on the more like, I always say the nitty gritty. I don't like that phrase, the nitty gritty, but we'll get into that in a separate one, because I think that'd be too much for one video, and that will be, and that's more for like nerds like me who like to, who love numbers and the more specifics and like logistical things. But here is my sort of list I created for all the different things that would go into this. So for one, we need a lab and lab equipment, and I'm not just talking like test tubes and beakers. I mean like proper machinery that would run tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now granted, you don't necessarily have to always buy those things outright. Like for example, there are ways to like essentially rent or lease them, or get on some sort of like make payments on them. You don't necessarily, you're not always expected to pay that much money like up front. There's different ways these things happen, but you have to think as well that we would need lab technicians, researchers, probably we'll need like liaisons or something along those lines, and just various different types of staff. Think like maintenance staff, whether that's we hire them on or they're like, it's like a contracted out thing. Like we need people to like maintain the building, and you know, like janitorial type people as well. So you gotta think along those lines. We're going to need probably a crap ton of trucks. And again, that's something that could be, most likely actually would be contracted out. But either way, you gotta pay for that. And thankfully there are ways to cut down on the cost of such a thing. You can do like basically what's like logistical collaboration, where if where possible you can share truck space with another organization, or and that could also, I mean, not just trucks, it could be like trains, for example. Truck is the most common thing, and I would imagine in this situation that is going to be the most common thing we would be using. Not to say that there wouldn't somehow be a scenario where a train is necessary, or even a plane, but just trying to stay within the realms of reality, or what's to be expected. Yeah, and so we would, that would be contracted with like a transportation or trucking company or logistics company. That there's different words for them. But we also need, oh yeah, I mentioned the clinical trials, and we're gonna have to comply with any of the necessary licensing. And I don't mean licensing in the same way that I was talking before, where like, you know, someone gets the license to like produce and sell a product. To meet those regulations, I mean, that's going to come at their own cost, and there will obviously be, you know, sort of like legal and administrative costs. Obviously, a lot goes into developing medication, and then of course, separate warehouse or like space, or like a distribution center, if not the two like combined. Again, we're speaking pretty well in the future, and this is more in the abstract, so not getting into the hard of number of like square footage or exactly how many trucks or how much like all these little things, which that again can be its own video, but I don't think that we're still in the more conceptual phase, so it doesn't really, it seems kind of pointless to start talking that stuff. Not to say I haven't considered it, or, you know, like time, or like the weight and space, all these different things. Yeah, and then again, we can do like logistics collaboration potentially there, so that which would reduce the cost of having a warehouse or like distribution center. Oh yeah, and then we also would need, obviously, money set aside for any potential like hiccups or emergencies. You know, and anything can happen, and you don't want to be caught with your, I don't know why I was saying caught with your pants down, but you get the point. And I suppose I could just, you know, keep going on with that, but I think you get the idea that there would be a lot that goes into this thing. And again, we don't need, like, we don't got to worry about trucks and stuff right away when you're still developing the thing and going through clinical trials and whatnot. But and again, we wouldn't need like the hundreds of thousands or millions right at the start, most likely. But you know, at some point over the course of the thing, until it bears fruit, and you know, we're actually regularly producing this, and you know, it is approved, works effectively, and people are actually purchasing it, and we're making a difference in people's lives. I think that it would go a long way, seriously, because I mean, that was just, that one example I gave was just myself, and then, you know, amplify that by all the different people on this medication, who often have to be on it their whole lives, or most of their lives. And we're talking like, what, there's, I mean, just in this country alone, there's like 2 to 3 million people with schizophrenia, at least. I guess I should have looked up exactly how many are on, well, I have, I don't remember exactly how many are estimated to be on antipsychotics, but I mean, we're talking like in the hundreds of thousands at least. So, I mean, that's a lot of lost income, and for a community of people that already tend to be lower income and not have much opportunities in life. And also, you have to think too, a lot of people, because it's so costly, or because the ones that they can afford or are just so severe with the side effects, that they can't get this medication. And there is genuine like accessibility issues too, as in like you simply just cannot get it. This is more on like the international scale, but it's just simply not available, or it's in very short supply. And I think this would open the door for people who can't afford antipsychotics as they are, or at least can't afford ones that work well with them. And these can be very like precarious medications. I mean, I have, mine is more in the, I guess I don't know if I can say it's treatment resistant, but it has not, 3 different antipsychotics have not worked for me, and they're different like dosages. And I've really struggled with the side effects. Some people have it a lot worse than me, obviously, but I've had my own issues. And so I guess that's sort of like a personal driver of this too. You know, I know what it's like to be on the bad end of this, and at times where I've had to stop taking antipsychotics because I simply could not afford them. And it's a real shame that people not only have to pay for their sanity, but have to pay an exorbitant amount, and often they have to choose between, you know, food or shelter or childcare, things like that, versus they're getting the medication they need. It is greatly unfortunate. And I think that is part of the reason too why we need people with schizophrenia, or at least to experience psychosis, to run this organization. Because, not to say that others can't have empathy, but I think it does help if you know, you have the condition or have some of the shared experiences. Anyway, this video is going on a bit too long, and I've rambled at you quite a bit. Sorry for, I keep saying sorry a lot in this video. I think it's because I'm like a little all over the place. You can tell I'm kind of excited about this, even though we're so far from it being reality. But anyway, apologies for, you know, looking at notes and stuff. I don't usually do that, but well, I guess there was one other video, I forgot about that, where I had a couple notes. Whatever. I don't usually use scripts and stuff, so it's weird. All right, I'm rambling. Thank you if you made it this far, and if you indeed did make it to the end. Incorporate, what SpongeBob character have I not used yet? I actually don't remember. Go with, what's that guy from the Salty Spittoon? Whatever that guy's name is, or maybe just quote like, what does he say? Like, welcome to the Salty Spittoon, how tough are you? What, something along those lines. Get that in your comment. Incorporate that into your comment, or just whatever SpongeBob character, because I honestly can't think of, I'm not sure which ones I've like decided to do already. All right, that's the end of this. It's going on 25 minutes, and I'm probably not going to edit this because I don't think I did too terribly, and I really want this to get out today, hopefully. So, goodbye.